Hello, I'm Martha Engber, host of Vigilant Positivity, a blog and podcast meant to decrease polarization by uniting Americans through civil discussion that leads to common ground. Thanks to those of you who've tuned in. Please feel free to subscribe and grow the Common Ground movement. Every month, I try to do a citizen spotlight to cast a light on other Americans on both sides of the aisle who are working hard to decrease polarization. Today, I'm talking with Ramsey Zimmerman. Hello, Ramsey.
Hello, Martha. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you for joining me. Ramsey Zimmerman is the host of What's Worthwhile, a podcast that focuses on what we can do to better focus on our peace of mind and vitality of body and spirit. Though now a certified holistic health specialist and nutritional therapy practitioner, Ramsey entered the wellness field after a 30-year career in business, one that often included a lot of stress. He aimed his sights on helping others in distress, which led to his current coaching practice and the publication of his book, Stress Response. Manage your response to stress in order to reduce anxiety, avoid burnout, and find calm and steady focus. After getting to know more about Ramsey, I wanted to find out what he's learning about how Americans can decrease their stress, not only in their personal lives, but also in relation to our current political turmoil that includes financial and job uncertainty as the economy changes and new technologies dramatically reshape our culture. To start us off, can you tell us what your two certifications entail? That of a holistic health specialist and a nutritional therapy practitioner.
Yes. Well, first off, thanks, Martha. I so appreciate you inviting me on to come and talk. Um, the holistic health specialist is sort of a general um, certificate that covers a lot of the basics around a variety of different types of health. So, looking at a lot of different aspects, including things like exercise, meditation. It went into a bit of traditional Chinese medicine. It went into some homeopathy, as well as um, things that are more familiar to us here in the West, things like nutrition and sleep and stress reduction. And then the nutritional therapy practitioner is more digging into aspects of nutrition and also other foundations of health. So we look specifically at promoting nutrient dense whole foods as the foundation of diet. We also look at effective digestion, ways to eat food and the foods that are specific to individuals so that they can digest those effectively and get those nutrients from the food that they eat. Also, stress reduction. So, managing the stress in our lives in ways that are productive instead of detrimental to our overall health. Getting daily movement, fresh air, sunshine. These things have lots of benefits to our bodies, and also getting enough and effective sleep regularly so that we can recover from the all the things that we do in the day. So the NTP or nutritional therapy practitioner very much promotes the many basic things that humans have been doing for all of history, and yet we find difficult in sort of the ways that we live today.
We hear all this really good advice, but we don't necessarily take it all or know how to fit it into our lives. I see.
Yes.
Can you also give us a brief explanation of what you mean by the human stress response? What chemical reactions take place when we experience a stressor?
Yeah, the stress response, um, our bodies evolved or were designed to respond to stress in ways that we could either fight or run away or potentially freeze. But that stress response, it releases hormone called cortisol, and that really influences a number of things within the body. It increases our heart rate, it increases blood pressure, our respiration. Uh, it also decreases digestion and reproductive systems. It basically prepares us for physical challenges. And in many ways today, the stress that we see and experience are not physical challenges anymore. They're mental, emotional, virtual challenges. And so getting that extra respiration and heartbeat and blood pressure doesn't necessarily help us, right? And we also oftentimes don't have the opportunity to burn that off because we don't have an immediate sort of physical reaction to that. So uh, it tends to uh, throw our bodies off balance, and it's difficult to get back into a state of rest and repair, which we need to digest effectively and to get rest and for our bodies to heal and also to reproduce.
The speed of our societal changes is so much faster than the evolutionary process. So
Yes.
we're stuck with what we've got, I see. What stressors do we humans typically encounter, and do you know which stressor is statistically often the most potent?
Uh, some stresses that we encounter on a regular basis these days are, come in the form of virtual communications. So we might get emails, we might get uh, pings on social media, either responding directly to posts that we've made or else news stories coming in. They could be actual encounters with people or it's difficult conversations that we're trying to have either in person or on the phone or online through a camera. Uh, I'm not familiar with the statistics necessarily, but I think that we can all relate that these are experiences that we have on a regular basis. And so oftentimes we're in an office space or we're in our home office, we're sitting in a chair when these things happen, or we're otherwise not engaged in physical activity. And so when we get that response, um, it's difficult. And it helps when we can get up, walk around, get some fresh air, get a little perspective. So, some of the advice that I give is that when you get triggered by an email or a message or something like that, take a beat and be thoughtful and mindful of what's happening, what you feel inside of your body, and take some deep breaths. Get up, walk around, look out a window or get outside and try to get some perspective before you respond. And then you can respond in a more, uh, you know, in a more meaningful way. And, oftentimes if we respond really reflexively to those kinds of messages, then we might regret what we said, and then we might get more stressed out afterwards as a result.
Yeah. So wait and give yourself time to actually, and I think that's an interesting thing that I've been hearing too is feel it in your body. And I think that's hard for
Yeah.
a lot of people to do. They are not used to stopping to think, oh, does this make me feel tight in my stomach or my throat? Does this make me feel like my hands are clenched? The physical repercussions of stress, we typically are only thinking about what brought us stress. Is that right?
It is. And those clenched muscles in your shoulders or in your hands, they can really accumulate. So that can accumulate over time to become much more significant issues that you're feeling in your body. And you may not realize where and what it's coming from. And so if you don't realize that, then you might seek other ways to relieve that pain. And you're not really addressing the root cause of it. So you end up sort of fighting an ultimately losing battle by treating the wrong things.
Uh, in terms of buildup. For example, stress can cause ongoing headaches, but people don't necessarily know it's the headaches that are caused or the stress that causes the headaches, but instead may think it's something else, some other deeper issue. What are some other classic signs of chronic stress?
Well, what's interesting about headaches, that's a great example. Um, Headaches are caused by a lot of things and a combination of a lot of things. So when we are experiencing stress, we often don't think about eating. Maybe we miss meals, or maybe the meals that we have are whatever that we can grab nearby. Oftentimes, these are not the best food choices. Maybe they are processed, maybe they have lots of sugar or salt, or they have things like seed oils, and they, give you a quick hit of sugar, but they often cause a blood sugar spike. And then as a result of that, you might have a blood sugar crash. And that roller coaster of blood sugar often will contribute to things like headaches. And so it's sort of a double whammy because you had the stress causing a cascade of events. Whereas if we take the time ahead of time to really think through and plan out our day, plan our meals ahead, base them around, make sure that we're getting enough protein at the right times of day, and that we are looking towards natural whole foods and not ultra processed foods and foods that don't have a lot of added sugar, then we'll have smoother blood sugar and be less inclined to have the ultimate response be a headache like that. So it's really a combination of factors that often contribute to that. And what we do as NTPs is we try to support the basic foundations of health instead of chasing symptoms. So instead of really looking to uh, specifically or only knock out that headache, what we try to do is support the full range of foundations of health so that things like headaches don't pop up as much.
Well, what are you able to draw on from your own past that clients can relate to? What are, for example, the symptoms that you noticed and the repercussions for you? Because you've just given us this kind of ideal how we should be running our lives, but you, of course, were a person who did suffer until you decided to make that change.
Well, in my 30s, I think I was sort of the classic example of someone who was working in the office and didn't get out much. And when I did get out, it was usually to make it to the food court at the mall to get lunch. And which the question was really which type of fried food am I going to have for lunch today, which is not a really productive food choice. And so, I had high blood pressure and I was not energetic, was not really very physically active, was getting into pretty lousy shape, was getting round in the middle in ways that we don't prefer. Uh, but then eventually I started looking into taking some supplements and started taking some supplements and starting to feel better, starting to feel more energetic. And then uh, started getting to the gym on a regular basis and started to eat better and also started running. So I'm an avid runner these days. Used to be that I would only run if I was chasing a soccer ball. But eventually I became one of those crazy people who actually enjoy running long distances just for the sake of it. And that was definitely a transition over time. It takes time to you sort of find uh, one or two things, that you can improve and try to build some progress and start to feel better. And then you start to feel like, okay, well, that worked out pretty well. I've cut out sugary sodas. Like I had to quit drinking Coca-Cola like cold turkey because I had just had way too much of that in my youth. But I was still hanging on for a long time to that one daily ginger ale. And when I cut out that altogether and just drinking water, I think that made a real impact on my health and energy levels. And, those are just examples of all of the things that we do that we don't really even necessarily think much about. But they add up. And the good news is that you can start with one and then you can add another one. And the changes that you make will also add up and you'll build some momentum.
You'll feel better as you go, and you'll be able to notice feeling better.
Yes, exactly.
Very interesting. When you talk to clients, how much stress is related to personal matters like jobs and family, and how much is related to societal stress, meaning news of unrest in our communities and country?
What's interesting is that often those two collide. So, uh, having personal stress at work, um, you know, a lot of men have a very strong desire to serve others and to serve their families and to be a stand-up guy, to be good and to be effective. But then that also comes with uh, just sort of living in a state of denial about their own health and oh, I'm fine, it's fine, I'm not gonna pursue that. I don't need to go to the doctor. I don't need to help with counseling. And I've got my buddies. um and then a lot of those relationships are very surface level and don't necessarily go deep. And a lot of guys really don't have many, some don't have any friends they can just be really straight and honest with. And meanwhile, we're trying to serve our families. We're trying to be the best husband that we can be, the best parents. And then there's always the pressure at work to perform and to not get passed up or passed by, to meet all of our goals and expectations so that we can get ahead, get a raise, get a promotion. And all of those pressures really combine. And many times they really impact people's health. And in terms of like societal pressure and political pressure, we don't operate in a vacuum, right? So there's uh, the sort of 24-hour news cycle and the constant social media that comes at us from all angles. And if we're talking to our friends or our family about that, we may not agree. And oftentimes there have been a lot of stories that I've heard and seen, and people have experienced within the last 5 or 10 years of political differences or anger around political elements, causing significant personal problems and damage with friendships, with marriages, with how people relate at work. Um, People feel like they cannot speak freely because they might say the wrong thing and offend the wrong person, or they themselves might feel targeted, that they are, the target of aggressions or microaggressions, and all of that stuff accumulates. Again, it accumulates within our bodies and it impacts our health, and it increases the stress loads. And there's usually often not really direct obvious ways to relieve that stress, and so it accumulates over time.
Well, it was interesting to read on your website that you specialize in reaching out to men. And obviously, you are a man, so you have that expertise, right, to start with. But there
Hmm.
also is apparently a phenomenon going on right now, a feeling among men in America that they're being cast aside, or their traditional roles are no longer valued. And there are a number of terms that have been used. One is a crisis of masculinity, another is male malaise, a needlessness gap, and also the left behind who might struggle with insufficient education to navigate a complicated high-tech world. So, regarding these, no matter the name, it appears that men are burdened more than they have been in the past generations. What unique stress-inducing issues do you think men face nowadays? We all know that we're all affected by news and social media and whatnot, but what is in your experience and talking with other men is new?
Well, it's a difficult situation to, it's not a simple situation, right?
Mhm.
And I don't dispute, and I don't think men dispute. Well, first of all, I can't speak for all men, right? I can only speak for myself, and I can speak for examples of people that I've spoken with, or things that I've read, or comments that people have made. Um, there's no denying that in past years that women have been in really difficult situations, and that minorities have been in really difficult situations, and that, you know, men, and specifically white men, or have been sort of traditionally in charge or in positions of power. I don't, first of all, I don't dispute that. Um, I think that now, and within the last 5 or 10 years, or however long it's been, there has been a lot more focus and attention on that fact. So pointing that out, right? And there has been and was certainly a lot of emphasis on trying to, shrink that gap between men and women, and minorities. And so helping lots of people to catch up, right? Helping lots of groups to catch up and close that gap. I think that that's all very positive. I think that the ultimate goal should be that opportunities are open and available to everyone, and that the people who are most qualified for those opportunities should win them, or be able to win them. The people who are the best fits, who are the most qualified. And looking for diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about uh, making as many people qualified and well positioned for those kinds of opportunities, right?
Mhm.
When efforts swing into, or even feel like, things like quotas, and it looks like there's a much smaller opportunity for men, specifically white men, then there certainly is a perception by white men that they have fewer opportunities as a result of that. And so what do you do with that, right? Because in some ways it's like, oh, well, cry me a river, for the last 200 years,
Yeah.
it was the opposite way. But that's maybe not a very gracious attitude in the sense that, well, that individual, that person who is competing for a position, they haven't specifically been competing for that position for 200 years. That's the job that they're looking for today. So there they are today, and they're in that position, and they're feeling like they're at a disadvantage. So, okay, so now maybe the shoe is on the other foot. Um, but people who have experienced that exact same thing their entire lives, um, uh, it's not surprising that they would say, well, deal with it. And so, but then if a young white man is dealing with that, it doesn't make it any easier, right? Um, that's a very long answer, but the point is that you sort of have to really think through how every individual experiences something like competing for an opportunity. And I believe we really need to do all of our best to make sure that opportunities are free and open and available, and that we're getting sort of the best competition and the best candidates and the best people are winning those opportunities. But when someone feels like they perhaps were the best for an opportunity which they didn't get, then that's going to be difficult to take.
So even if this situation where you feel like you're a good person, but now you're looked upon as though you're a bad person, that's very stressful, right? That's what you're saying. People are going along and they are, but there a time comes and they just are made to feel bad and they're not sure why they need to feel bad. And they just are, and that's stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if people are experiencing it directly, or if there is just rhetoric that they are sort of seeing out there or experiencing indirectly, um, it just speaks to the difficulty or the downside of making generalizations about any group of people,
Yes.
because people get swept up in that. Um, why do we have to be at loggerheads? Why can't we see each other as individuals? And, you know, uh, why do we have to think that any groups of people are, bad? Why can't we all be good?
Mm, yes. Well, what message about stress or well-being in general would you like to convey to men? And is it different at all in the message that you would also give to anybody?
Yeah, in many ways it's the same, but specifically to men, we're hardworking. We we need to think of ourselves as leaders. We want to be out front. That is within our nature, and we should lean into it. Uh, but in order to be strong leaders, we need to take care of ourselves. Um, and taking the time to really uh, go through and learn and understand what it is that we're experiencing, and our emotions and feelings, that might seem fluffy to men. It might seem like it's just wasting your time when you could be doing something more productive. uh, it's not really true. That's kind of a fallacy, because we need to take that time, and we need to understand what's really going on inside of our mind and body and spirit, in order to really address it directly. So, and again, that doesn't just go for men. I think much of that goes the same for women. I think just in some cases, women might find it more natural to do that kind of introspection.
or have been taught that it's okay to do that, or
Yeah.
they should do it, cultural. And I understand the stressors in my personal life, but what seems really unfair are the stressors placed on us by others who cause societal turmoil. Often they're leaders at the local, state, and federal level. Think of ICE agents coming into your communities, or our country getting involved in foreign conflicts, or one state pitted against another. We're not responsible for those actions. Yet we see and hear what's going on and get stuck with the stress. Besides putting our heads in the sand, what can we do to deal with the stress of this particularly chaotic time in our history?
Honestly, I think that we need to talk about it more instead of less. There are That's that old cliche of, don't talk about politics or religion, if you don't want to, get into arguments or whatever. And yet those are two of the most meaningful parts of our lives. And with the sort of the way that it feels today about politics, it seems like uh, the sides have been drawn like very, very clearly. And so you've got one side or the other on every issue. This polarization it's gotten to the point that, when people dig in and say our side is right and the other side is wrong, when both sides of an issue just feel amazingly passionately that their side is wrong and the other side is that their side is right and the other side is wrong, then at that point, it almost is like ends justify the means. Then you can sort of do things to the other side that you wouldn't do normally. Or you start thinking of people on the other side as less than human, or that they have less rights than you do. And that's where you really run into danger. What we need to do is just continue to realize and remember and understand that the people on the other side of issues are still they're people. Life is not easy to understand these days. We need to have more interest, more curiosity in uh, other perspectives. What do other people think? What have other people experienced? Why do they believe what they believe? And to the extent that we can actually smile and look someone in the eye and say, wow, tell me more about that. How, why do you think that? Like, where did you get that from? Tell me more. And do it from a genuine place of wanting to understand. And then hopefully, maybe you'll get an invitation to explain to them what you believe and understand. And maybe it's completely different. But these kinds of conversations, I believe that they clear the air and they reduce the incoming stress and they work through the stored stress that we have. And it can also heal relationships that are strained, and it can prevent relationships from being broken. And, you know, I just really believe that mind, body, and spirit are all tied together. And those things that we have in our mind, which we believe are inextricably linked, physically connected to our bodies, and they exhibit um, symptoms within our bodies. So, uh, yeah, I just really think the best thing that we can do is seek to understand uh, situations from all sides and try to communicate more.
So, holding hate and rage is very stressful,
It
whereas
is.
adopting a attitude of civility and curiosity can act as a de-stressor.
It very much is. And there's the two, perhaps the two opposites to what you said, hate and rage. I think a lot about forgiveness and gratitude. So the two ideas of forgiveness and gratitude have tremendous physical healing powers within the body. So when we feel forgiveness and gratitude, it signals to our bodies that it's okay, that things are okay, that we're safe. Uh, Forgiveness is tough. And many people don't think of it this way or realize that forgiveness is for us. It benefits us. It doesn't, even more so than it benefits the people that we are forgiving. Whether or not we ever confront or talk to the people that we're forgiving, the act of forgiveness is within us. It's releasing the pain and the injury that we feel like that person caused to us in whatever way. Um, and that is a mental release. Gratefulness gives us a sense of perspective. We can get into a loop of all of these things are wrong, right? Everything is wrong. But if instead we take some time out and try to think about the things that we're grateful for, we can list them off. I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head, and I'm grateful that it's warm. I'm grateful that I'm able to have this conversation. That gives you a sense, oh, I do have things that are going right. I am safe in this position, at least currently, and I can build from that. And so those are uh, ways in which to release the injury, the pain, and the anger that you were describing.
Mm. It's great for de-stressing. Being kind and thoughtful and is just a great way to calm. Well, this seems like a good time to talk about your podcast, What's Worthwhile. Why did you name it that, and what issues do you cover?
What's worthwhile started out for me as a question. I was coming off of kind of a difficult time in my life, uh, not really sure what my priorities were, felt like the world had changed around me. And I was kind of at a dead end in my career. And the only thing I was excited about doing was making a podcast and just evaluating everything. And so I asked myself the question, what is worthwhile for me to do next, for me to think about? Uh, and it's even asking the question of what's real, what's true. It's so hard these days to even tell what's real and true online. We don't have a single source or authority of truth. And I spent a bunch of time thinking through and got a initial answer that what was worthwhile for me was building mind, body, and spirit wellness. Just looking at all the ways that those three things were interconnected. And that for me and for basically anyone and everyone, if we're going to go out and be successful and productive in the long term, we need to address all of those aspects of our health, of mind, body, and spirit. Um, the podcast itself is really has two formats. One is interviews with one or a couple of people at a time, having a discussion around a particular topic. And the other format is kind of a short solo monologue, usually, I don't know, 8 minutes or so. Uh, that was the first format that I had. It sort of evolved from me reading journal entries that I made. I've been journaling for many, many years, and it was a very short step to go from writing that to sort of reading them out loud and into a microphone. So those are really the two formats. And these days, what I'm really addressing in the podcast is that what's worthwhile is considering what we consume, believe, say, and do towards peace of mind, vitality of body, and joy of spirit. And that goes for food and drink, the things that we eat in terms of nutrition, but it also goes for ideas and narratives, things that we uh, read about, watch, and talk about. So, yeah, just like this conversation is just about all the different ways that all of those things interact.
Well, what gives you hope that we can learn how to decrease the stress in our lives? And what effect do you think it would have on our society if the majority of us took stress management more seriously?
You know, if more of us took stress management more seriously, then we uh, we could really meet and build up to our full potentials. It seems like there's just a lot of noise and wasted energy and anger, and a lot of people bouncing off of each other and causing misunderstandings and uh, hurting each other for no particularly good reason. A lot of that, I think, could be alleviated if people were better taking care of themselves, if they encouraged others to be healthy as well, and if we really got out of our own way. I think that we could accomplish much more.
So invest in self-care is what I'm hearing.
It's a good investment. It's a good investment. I absolutely believe that it is, and invest in self-care. And think about the people that you care about. Do you want them to be healthy? Do you want them to take care of themselves? I assume that you do, and then flip that over and think, well, what do you think they want for you? Do
Hmm.
they want you to be healthy? They probably do. And so afford yourself the same good positivity that you would afford to other people that you care about.
That is a really great last thought. I really have appreciated talking with you very much, Ramsey. Thanks so much for coming on.
It was my pleasure, Martha. Thank you so much.
And thanks again to those of you who listened to the episode. You can find a post and transcript of today's interview on my blog, vigilantpositivity.wordpress.com. Please join our cause.